Welcome to the Deception Narrative Workshop. Once I believed marriage signified companionship, but now I understand it could also involve fraud wrapped up in a wedding ring. Call me Ethan, and for over a decade, I assumed my spouse Brooke was climbing the corporate ladder in pharmaceutical sales. The late-night conferences, the regular professional seminars across various cities, the obligatory team-building sessions that seemed to coincide with Valentine's Day or our anniversary. I supported all of it because strong couples make sacrifices together, didn't I? What I hadn't realized was that I wasn't making sacrifices for our future. I was financing hers through another person. The threads began to unravel on a Tuesday in March. Not with lipstick on a collar or a dubious text message. Those would have been more merciful. It started when I received an alert that our savings account had fallen below $500, the same account that held $43,006 weeks earlier. I was at work when the notification arrived. My hands grew cold. For the past 3 years, we had been saving to buy a house. Since Brooke dealt with our finances due to her job requiring expense reports and budgeting, she was more knowledgeable about it. She said that was the reason, but I was skeptical and called her. After 4 rings, she sounded out of breath. "Hey, babe, I'm in the middle of something. Our savings account has $500. There was a moment of silence, then she added, "Oh, right, I meant to tell you about that." If it had been any other amount, her explanation might have made sense. But she was talking about $42,000. I couldn't help but feel dramatic. She claimed she moved it to a better investment account because the interest rate was poor. Apparently, she had spent months researching this. She assured me it was completely safe. However, we had never discussed any such investment account. She intended to surprise me with its growth once it increased, but didn't due to my anxiety over financial changes. The conversation ended before I could respond because she had a client meeting. If I hadn't been upset, her story might have sounded plausible. However, her tone, the way she dismissed my concern about our savings as if it were excessive, stirred something within me. It could have been doubt or merely clarity I had been holding back for months. I decided to leave work early, informed my supervisor of a family emergency, which was not entirely untrue. Upon reaching home, I opened our laptop. Brooke always used the same password, Sparky 2014, named after our deceased dog. Sentimental, she had once called it, and now it proved convenient for me. Her email served as a guide to a life that seemed unfamiliar. The first thing I discovered was a Venmo history, filled with transactions amounting to thousands, sent to someone named Pierce Whitmore. Small amounts like $600 or $1,200 at a time, and sometimes larger sums of $2,000. The descriptions were casual, dinner, weekend getaway, helping with rent. The earliest transaction I found dated back 2 years, $1,400, accompanied by a little heart emoji and the note, "For us." Watching this screen, it felt like I was witnessing someone else's life. This couldn't be Brooke. My wife, Brooke, who displayed unease when we spent $50 at an upscale restaurant. Yet she tearfully rejoiced when I presented a $1,200 engagement ring, exclaiming, "I can't believe you saved this much for me." However, as the evidence accumulated, it became clear. Hotel bookings in cities she'd claimed were work trips, but they were under Brooke and Pierce, not her company account. Flight confirmations for 2. Car rental reservations for weekend getaways. I assumed she was taking a loan for client dinners. And then, the apartment lease, Pierce Whitmore, 1847 Morrison Street, Unit 408, with a monthly rent of $1,850. Brooke as the lease guarantor. That night, I traced our financial history on a spreadsheet while Brooke was supposedly at a business dinner. Each questionable transaction, every cash withdrawal, every credit card charge not matching her work schedule. The discernible pattern, the methodical trail. For at least 2 years, she had been secretly transferring funds, possibly even longer. Initially, it was small sums, $500 for car repairs with no visible receipts, $800 for a bridesmaid dress from an unphotographed wedding. As my vigilance waned and I trusted her more, the amounts escalated. The largest transfers occurred during her business trips. She would transfer sums ranging from $3,000 to $5,000 into an account I couldn't access, which she then dispersed as cash or payments to Pierce. My savings account was drained in 3 significant withdrawals: $15,000 in January, $18,000 in February, and $9,000 in early March. By the time she arrived home at 10:47 p.m., I had 127 marked transactions totaling $89,400 in traced funds. She walked in smelling of wine and a cologne that wasn't mine. "Hey, she said, removing her heels. I'm sorry it took so long. You know how clients can be when they're trying to meet their targets. How was Pierce? She paused mid-step toward the kitchen. What? Asked Pierce Whitmore, located at 1847 Morrison Street. Regarding the man whose apartment expenses you've been covering. A look crossed her face I had never witnessed before, not shock, not guilt, but calculation. She was weighing which version of the truth to share with me. Ethan, let me clarify. You transferred our joint savings into an account I can't access and have used it to support another man's lifestyle. Is there any need for clarification on that point? He is not my boyfriend. He's someone I'm assisting. He found himself in a difficult predicament, and You discovered the hotel records, Brooke, as well as the flight details. The supposed anniversary weekend in Charleston, which I believed you were attending for a regional sales conference, was actually spent with him. Her expression changed. The calculation vanished, replaced by something colder. It appears you've been invading my email privacy. You have stolen $90,000. I did not steal anything. That money belongs equally to both of us as per our marriage. That hidden and expended community property. She abruptly settled on the couch's arm, appearing drained. This wasn't deliberate, it transpired. Pierce and I encountered each other at a work function, and we resonated strongly, more so than you and I have in years. Consequently, you chose to subsidize his livelihood with our funds. He's been facing financial difficulties, unemployed, and he's an artist, Ethan. He can't simply transition into IT like you. He requires backing as he accumulates his work portfolio. The audacity left me speechless for a brief moment. She didn't deny it. Instead, she justified her actions. I want a divorce, I declared. Very well, take it, but you won't receive everything simply because you're hurt. I too contributed to this marriage. You also depleted our savings on your boyfriend's rent. Consult a lawyer, Ethan. I already have. Her final statement struck me like a blow. She had already consulted a lawyer, implying she had been preparing for this. This wasn't an unexpected affair spinning out of control. It was a calculated move. That night, she retired to the guest room. I didn't sleep. Instead, I invested 7 hours in documenting all my findings, downloaded bank statements, took screenshots, and organized them into a folder labeled Financial Infidelity Evidence. The following morning, I contacted the only attorney I knew personally, Coleman Barrett, a family law specialist whom I'd met through a mutual friend. He agreed to meet me that afternoon at his high-rise downtown office with an expensive view. Barrett, a gray-haired man in his 50s, had the composed air of someone who dealt with every kind of marital crisis. I explained everything to him, the timeline, the transactions, the apartment lease, the false business trips. After I finished, he leaned back in his chair and tapped his pen on his legal pad. "This is marital fraud," he said. It was a clear case of dissipation of assets. My wife had systematically diverted marital funds for an extramarital affair, which this state's judges do not tolerate. Can we recover the funds? We can attempt to do so. What matters most is preventing her from obtaining half of what remains. If we can show she spent $90,000 of shared assets on her affair, the court may award you a disproportionate share of the remaining assets as compensation. What steps should I take? Continue gathering evidence. Avoid bringing up other matters as not to alert her that a case is being built. If she tries to transfer more funds, we'll apply for a temporary restraining order on the accounts. However, you'll need to sign a retainer agreement. The costs will range from $15,000 to $20,000. It could be higher if she contests vigorously. I was considering our savings accounts $500. I'll find a way, he acknowledged. One last thing. Is she aware of this evidence? She knows I'm aware of Pierce. She is unaware that I have meticulously documented everything. That's good. Let's keep it that way. The element of surprise forms half our advantage. I borrowed $18,000 against my car at a 9% interest rate, with a repayment period of 3 years, yet Barrett seemed worth it. A week later, he filed for divorce and asked for complete financial disclosure. 10 days after that, Brooke's counterclaim arrived via her lawyer, demanding half of all marital assets as well as spousal support, arguing she'd given up her career progression to sustain my underpaying tech support role. The irony would have been amusing if not for its anger-inducing nature. Barrett requested a court date for the Asset Division hearing, which was set for late May, 8 weeks away. In the interim, Brooke left to give us space. I later discovered this meant she'd moved into Pierce's apartment permanently. The subsequent 8 weeks were the most peculiar of my existence. I visited my workplace, returned to a vacant house, and spent nights with Barrett's paralegal, Gretchen, a shrewd lady who helped me compile all financial proof into a coherent presentation that could guide a judge through 2 years of systematic embezzlement. Meanwhile, Brooke appeared to believe she had already triumphed. She uploaded photos on social media showcasing her and Pierce at art galleries, restaurants, weekend getaways to the coast. She resumed making her Instagram public, an action she'd previously kept private during our marriage for professional purposes. I now comprehended why. She had been concealing her dual life. Her attorney proposed a settlement 3 weeks prior to the hearing, equal division of assets, no spousal support from either side, and a clean break. Barrett contacted me promptly. He claimed she aimed to bypass the hearing, suggesting I accept the deal if I desired tranquility, reject it if I sought justice. What would you advise? I believe it's appropriate for the judge to witness her actions, not just for our case, but because such financial deceit warrants consequences. It's your decision. We proceed to court. The hearing is scheduled for May 23rd in Judge Brennan's courtroom. I had never been inside a family court before. It was smaller and less dramatic than I anticipated, with fluorescent lights, worn carpeting, and a seemingly bored bailiff. Brooke sat at the plaintiff's table alongside her attorney, Hastings, a man in an expensive suit who exuded confidence from his frequent victories. She opted for a conservative appearance, navy blazer, minimal jewelry, and her hair pulled back. The picture of a wronged wife, Barrett and I sat facing them. He advised me to wear my best button-down and maintain a neutral expression. "Let the evidence speak," he said. "You are the calm, rational spouse. Allow her to appear chaotic." Judge Brennan entered promptly at 9:00 a.m. In her mid-60s, she wore reading glasses on a chain and carried an air of no-nonsense from dealing with numerous lies. "Today is the division of assets hearing in the case Hendricks v. Hendricks," she stated, seating herself. "I've examined both parties' financial disclosures." Hastings stood. "Yes, Your Honor, my client requests an equal division of marital property. Mrs. Hendricks contributed equally to the marriage and is entitled to half of all assets gathered during the union." Barrett then stood. "We object, Your Honor. We're asking for an unequal distribution favoring Mr. Hendricks due to evidence of financial misconduct by Mrs. Hendricks," piquing Brennan's interest. For 2 years, from January 2023 to March 2025, Mr. Hendricks systematically redirected around $89,400 of marital funds towards a relationship with Pierce Whitmore, his extramarital partner. Immediately, Mr. Hastings protested. "Your Honor, the personal life of my client is immaterial to asset division," he argued. "However, it becomes significant when those marital funds are employed for such purposes," countered Mr. Barrett. "This isn't a matter of infidelity, it's a question of fraud," added Mr. Brennan, leaning forward. "Mr. Barrett, I will permit you to present your evidence," the judge decided, giving Mr. Hastings his turn to respond. Mrs. Hendricks handed Mr. Barrett a bound folder which he distributed to the judge and Mr. Hastings, keeping one on the evidence table. "Your Honor," he began, "the contents of this document detail a chronological financial analysis of Mrs. Hendricks's banking activity. Each flagged transaction signifies marital funds that were either transferred to or spent on behalf of Pierce Whitmore." He explained the contents further, pointing out Venmo payments and hotel bookings made during this period. The shared apartment lease and dual flight bookings when Brooke allegedly traveled for work alone. The airline reservations for 2 caught her attention. Brooke avoided looking at the documents, instead fixing her gaze straight ahead with a clenched jaw, as if ignoring them would make them vanish. Barrett displayed the last page, my created spreadsheet. It showed 27 transactions totaling $89,400. These funds were withdrawn from joint accounts, Your Honor. Mr. Hendricks was unaware of these expenditures until after Mrs. Hendricks emptied their savings account, money they had been saving for a house, leaving only $500. Brennan scrutinized the spreadsheet, revealing no emotions on her face. Eventually, she lifted her gaze. "Mrs. Hendricks, did you use nearly $90,000 of marital funds for an affair?" Hastings attempted to intervene. "Your Honor, my client doesn't need to." "Answer the question, Mrs. Hendricks," the judge interrupted. Brooke addressed the judge. "I transferred funds. That isn't illegal. We were married. The money was also mine." "You didn't tell your husband about withdrawing $42,000 from our savings account. He thought I handled our finances, so it wasn't necessary. That's not the question here." There was no response. "Were you a co-signer on Mr. Whitmore's apartment lease?" He needed assistance. "But using marital funds for it, I hadn't considered that aspect of it." "How did you justify it, Mrs. Hendricks?" Brooke's attorney placed a hand on her arm, but she shrugged him off. "I viewed it as helping someone I have affection for, someone who supports my ambitions instead of merely living passively working in tech support." The courtroom fell silent. Even Hastings seemed to want to vanish. Brennan took off her glasses. Mrs. Hendricks, over 19 years of practice, I've witnessed a great deal of unscrupulous behavior during divorces. However, the audacity you're demonstrating at this moment is truly astounding. Your Honor, Hastings interjected, I'm not finished. In the divorce proceedings, Mr. Barrett has allegedly misused over $100,000 of shared funds for an extramarital relationship, signed financial agreements without Mrs. Hendricks's knowledge, and yet claims entitlement to half of the remaining assets due to a lack of respect for his career. Is that a correct summary, Ms. Hastings? To which Brooke remained silent. Brennan reviewed the financial records again and asked, Mr. Barrett, could you clarify your request? In essence, he is seeking 75% of the remaining marital assets, an order for Mrs. Hendricks to reimburse the dissipated funds if possible, and a total sum of about $128,000, correct? This includes approximately $39,000 in shared assets and an order for repayment of $89,000, leaving Mrs. Hendricks with roughly $13,000, Your Honor. Are there any documents challenging these financial records, Judge? We require some time to examine them as they have been in your possession for 3 weeks. Do you possess evidence suggesting these transactions didn't take place? Hastings seemed unsure. No, Judge. In that case, I am granting Mr. Barrett's proposal for a 75% 25% asset division in favor of Mr. Hendricks. This amounts to $39,000 for him and $13,000 for Mrs. Hendricks. Furthermore, I am instructing Mrs. Hendricks to reimburse $50,000 of the dissipated funds within 18 months, in monthly payments of $2,800 to Mr. Hendricks. Brooke rose from her seat. I can't manage that amount. I don't have it. Then you will need to find alternative methods, Mrs. Hendricks. Sell the car, take on a second job, or seek help from Mr. Whitmore. I don't mind how you accomplish it, but you will repay what was wrongfully taken. You did steal, didn't you? Yes, I did. I used marital assets for an extramarital relationship without my husband's consent. In this liquidation situation, I am entitled to demand restitution. If you choose to contest this, you have the right to do so, but I doubt an appellate court will be more lenient towards you than I am. She sank back into her seat, her complexion drained. Brennan sealed the order. The divorce is finalized, asset distribution as specified. Mrs. Hendricks has 30 days to initiate repayment. We're adjourned. The bailiff announced the next case before we had even risen from our seats. Outside the courtroom, Barrett greeted me with a handshake. It turned out better than I anticipated. Will she truly pay? She must if she wishes to steer clear of contempt charges. If she fails to make payments, we file a motion and she could incur penalties. Most people manage to find the funds. Rook and Hastings walked past us without meeting my gaze. Through the glass doors, I saw her on her phone, angrily gesticulating, likely contacting Pierce. I felt less burdened exiting that courthouse than I had in months. Not happy per se. No triumphant vindication, merely a sense of lightness. It was as if I had discarded another's deceit and relief washed over me. The following half-year was tranquil. 5 weeks post-hearing, Rook's initial payment arrived tardily, but it came. $2,800 on the first day of each subsequent month, which I deposited into a fresh savings account, not for a house anymore, but for whatever lay ahead. I erased my social media, ceased monitoring Rook's posts, no longer cared about the status of her relationship with Pierce or if their bond had fractured due to her financial burdens. A year elapsed and Gretchen, Barrett's paralegal, messaged me. Rook had completed all 18 payments, totaling $50,400, including the final $600 for interest she had consented to. You are free from her, Gretchen penned. Legally and financially, thought you'd want to know. I did indeed wish to know. Not due to any impact on my life then, but because it signified equilibrium. Over a span of 2 years, she amassed $89,000 from deceit. I retrieved $89,400 through 1 day of truth, responding subduedly to Gretchen's message with, "Thank you for informing me." Occasionally, during bill payments, account balance checks, or financial decision-making, I ponder the incident. I reflect on the ease with which one can trust another with their money, time, and future, and the potential havoc they can wreak if they consider you unworthy of truth. However, mostly, I contemplate Judge Brennan's expression as she questioned Rook about spending $90,000 on an affair, and Rook replied, "It was my money too." This instance, this solitary statement, was when Rook lost everything, not due to the affair or the money, but because she firmly believed she had done nothing wrong, and the judge recognized it. Barrett recognized it. Even Hastings recognized it. One cannot defend someone who refuses to acknowledge their need for defense. I am currently managing well. Quite well, in fact. Managed to settle the personal loan within 2 years instead of the planned 3. Switched to a more affordable apartment, saving almost half compared to what we would have spent on our intended house. Received a job promotion, realizing I excel when not encumbered by someone systematically undermining my life. Also began dating 6 months back, nothing too serious so far. However, I become cautious, not exactly paranoid, just vigilant. Pay attention to subtle signs, such as how one handles financial matters, whether they answer honestly or evade questions, and how they treat people who don't benefit them. Learn that love without responsibility is merely a transaction where one pays while the other collects. No longer willing to be the only one contributing. If there's a takeaway from this, it's not to mistrust everyone or assume relationships are bound to fail. It's more straightforward: trust but verify, hope for the best, know the worst. If someone reveals their character by depleting your funds, endorsing leases for others while men, and denying wrongdoing by claiming it was our money, take them at their word initially. Judge Brennan was correct. Entitlement is evident. Once recognized, it cannot be unseen.